Welcome to Discover Marshalltown. I'm your host, Denny Gravenbauer. And as you can see today, some very interesting creatures have shown up here on our table, along with one creature that's been highly anticipated coming back to Discover Marshalltown, my friend, my buddy, Mr. Conservation of Marshall County, Mike Stegman. Mike, welcome to Discover Marshalltown.
It's a pleasure to be here, and yes, you say you have some new friends here, and I guess these are my friends too. And you know, Marshalltown, Marshall County is very fortunate to have the Marshall County Conservation Board, which is a local government agency, kind of like a smaller DNR. You know, it's locally funded. It responds immediate to local concerns, questions. If somebody has a question about hunting or fishing or camping, you know, they don't have to get the runaround as to who to call, who to go to find out the answer. We're right here. And of course our offices are out at the Grimes Farm. And of course the Grimes Farm is host of the Conservation Center. And in that we have a whole host of mounted animals. And that was kind of one of the things that I appreciated growing up. And that's how I learned a lot about the natural resources, about the animals. You can look at photographs, you can look at field guides for identification. You can look at these animals at feeding stations like your bird feeders, you know, at your home. But to get up close and personal and do actual studies on feather lengths or things like that, you have to have these specimens in hand. And one of the ways to preserve them is the method of taxidermy. And it's turned into really an art form. It's legal for people to possess certain animals through as a trophy, if you will, from hunting or fishing excursions, and they want to preserve that memory of that outing in the outdoors. Again, the Marshall County Conservation Board out at the Grimes Farm Conservation Center has a wide selection of specimens on display, and I do through some of my interpretive work when I go out and visit with school groups or adult groups about say a wood duck or raccoon or walleye, for example, and I take this mounted specimen with me, and I do my program and pause for questions, and usually one of the first questions out of their mouth is that real?
Well, you know, now that you say that, you know, when you brought this in, this looks like something that we've got in our backyards or is going through that we see. And the process, I mean, it's got the, I almost thought it was purring there at me, but it, you know, is this a, do you get in competition when you display this?
The taxidermy work in the recent years, in recent, I'll say the last 20, 25 years, has really taken a turn, and it's not just your proverbial duck on a stick or a fish on the wall, you know, from Canada. It's turned into an art form. And everything you see is obviously preserved, but then what's going beyond the preservation of the animal is in essence to recreate them in a little habitat. And of course you have raccoons on your back porch, like you said, and they come up and steal your vegetables and garbage, cat food that you may have sitting out for your cats. And of course the walleye here, you know, we've got not just the fish that you'd hang on the wall as representing your trophy of your fishing trip, but we've got a lake bottom here that the fish is coming up, and if you look close, he's actually looking just to eat a little leech down there, which is a natural food source. So it's gone beyond just the mounting of an animal to presenting it in its natural habitat. And that is huge for education, especially on things that we're concerned with at the Conservation Center, trying to relay, because there's people, the only outing they get is to come to the Conservation Center. You know, they're not either not fortunate enough or don't have the resources to be able to get out to a county park or private land to hunt or fish or study these animals. And so this is a great way of natural history interpretation presentations.
I know we've done shows from Grimes Farm, and just seeing some of the different displays. Do those get changed, rotated, moved around?
There's times we do try to put different features in. Some of them are permanent habitat dioramas depicting what Iowa looked like 200 years ago in a prairie or forest or wetland. But and then you'd mentioned earlier too, you questioned competitions, and we do. The taxidermist it's gone beyond the just the mounting of the animal to the art form, which brings forth what is called a competition and show, but in reality, it's a school. And what you do is, if you're a taxidermist, you would mount up your specimen, take it to the show, and you would have it judged by a master taxidermist, which means he's gone through all the process. He has gone through the different divisions at the various taxidermy show, and each state has its own taxidermy association, and then there's also national and world competitions.
Really?
And when you get to that level, you know what you're doing.
Now, how did this type of raccoon die?
Legal game hunting, fishing, and trapping seasons is how these 3 specimens were collected. You can trap or hunt raccoons in the fall of the year. Of course, ducks, you have open and closed seasons. And of course, fishing, is year-round recreational activity. Some of the other specimens that you would see, say, at the Grimes farm, the hawks, the owls, the eagles are protected, and people cannot have those or possess those in their homes. We have special permits from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, as well as the Iowa Department of Natural Resources, to allow us, for educational purposes, to show them off again at the Grimes farm, or to take them out to schools or different public events.
How do you get this one so perfect, though? I mean, you sit there and you look at this, and I mean, from the whiskers to the eyes to the toenails. I mean, now you're talking to somebody that knows nothing about how
Sure.
you do this, but do you completely take the animal after it's dead, take it apart, put it back together again?
You can dissect the word taxidermy itself and understand what the process is. Taxi, and again, we're going back into Latin forms, back to my school days of trying to memorize the Latin names of all these creatures. But taxi is to move something. Dermy is skin, so you're moving the skin. Basically what you're doing is taking the skin of the animal, preserving it, and then putting it in the body. As far as the accuracy, to get it perfected, practice makes perfect.
Wow.
That's where the competitions come into play, because when you enter a piece in the competition, eventually in the end result of the competition and show, you will be competing with your fellow taxidermists. But initially, it's a school. You're getting graded by the master taxidermist, who has a checklist of things to go down, to look at the anatomy of the animal to see if you have it correct, look at the eyes to see if they're set correctly, see if you have rebuilt the eyelids, the toenails, done your painting processes properly. So the show and competition is really a school. And every year I always come away, if not from the judges, but from conversing with my fellow taxidermists, to learn something new, a new technique to help you in the process to not necessarily get quicker, but to make it look better and make it more anatomically correct, natural history settings. So
I know we've done programs with the taxidermist programs that have come to Marshalltown,
right,
and for their competition through the Chamber Ambassadors. We've been out there and we've hosted kind of a little cheese and cracker program. And if you thought this was kind of a joke or not to take it serious, you don't want to tell those people that.
No.
Because they are very, very serious and actually on how they go about this and how they want this presented.
Well, it's big business too. We've got several supply companies right here in the state of Iowa that provide supplies worldwide. So it's a multi-million-dollar industry. The show itself, Marshalltown, as you mentioned, has been very fortunate the last 8 years now to have hosted the Iowa Taxidermist Association and show out at the Best Western, and of course that's going to continue as far as I'm aware. And it's held usually around the end of March, 1st of April every year, and of course this year in 2016 we'll host that here in Marshalltown again. And there's a public viewing time on April 1st from noon to 5 in the afternoon for the people to come and look and see what's all on display. And I always find it interesting because you never know what's going to show up. You'll have your typical species that are indigenous to Iowa: the walleyes, bass, bluegills, raccoons, ducks of various species, pheasants, of course the deer heads. But it's a competition. We have people come from out of state and bring their creations to show. And some of those specimens were collected from around the world. We've had African species, game species.
Really?
We've had ibex that have been taken in Afghanistan. We had a Bengal tiger one year come be presented at the show, so it's a really neat show. But again,
Why do they choose Marshalltown?
centrally located
Centrally
in the
located,
state,
okay.
the accommodations have been well received here. It's not a huge event overall, and so the Taxidermy Association has been known internally amongst its members. And of course, I've been a member for a number of years and actually served as president for the last 4 years now. It's a small, tight-knit group in which they're willing to share things, and in doing so, they sit down and have a meal together. They bring their families involved. It's turned into a large extended family is really what it is. It's a neat association and group to have been a part of.
Is this a display, one of your display
This,
models?
I have only ever done birds. So
Really?
the other mediums, as far as fish and mammals, I've never attempted. I keep busy enough just working with my birds. Now,
How long does it take to make something like that?
well, there's some downtime involved, step-by-step processes. Of course, the fish and the mammals, to preserve their skins, it goes through basically a tanning or pickling process. So there's a series of solutions you have to put the skins in once you've removed all the meat and the grease from the skin for long-term preservation methods. And then as far as birds goes, it's a skinning process. Wash the skins and then dry them. In fact, I tell you what, let's look at the process step by step here.
Okay. We're going to do that right now?
We're going to do that right now.
All right. Now, before we get into that, how long would one of these last?
You know, theoretically, hundreds of years. You know, look at the Egyptian mummies. I mean, in essence, they've been preserved. So as far as that goes, the first duck I ever shot was in 1977. And so we're talking 39 years, and I got him mounted, and he still sits on a bookcase in my house.
Really?
And he looks just as good as the day I picked him up. And there's some things you do have to consider as far as displaying.
Probably temperature?
There's, the museum settings, when you have temperature and humidity control is one thing, but probably the biggest key is ultraviolet protection.
Oh, sure.
You can expose either of these three mounts to direct sunlight, and they would appear as though they were 100 plus years old in just a matter of months. The UV rays really have an effect on feathers and fur in particular, but fish, primarily what you're seeing there is the paint. So again, it's an art form. You go back to airbrushing with like the feet and the bill on the duck here, and then of course the fish is all paint that you see.
Okay, we got more to show, more to look at. We're going to look at it step by step. You're watching Discover Marshalltown. We'll be right back.
Can you take this away? I don't feel safe with the gun in my house.
Something ain't going to move here and jump and bite me, is it, before we... We're back, and as you can see, we've taxidermied things away because we moved things out and we brought things back in, so we've taxied. See, I'm learning.
You bet.
I'm learning something. We're with Mike Stegman, Director of Conservation in Marshall County, and we're talking about taxidermy. Did I say that right?
You did.
Taxidermy.
Yep.
And he's going to show us the process of the whole program.
And it was interesting, you know, a minute ago, as when we first started the show, as I introduced, you know, when I was taking animal out and talked to school groups or other public groups about a certain species like a snow goose here, and I'd tell them the natural history that they breed in the Arctic and spend the winter on the Texas Gulf Coast. And the first question out of somebody's mouth would always be, is that real? And you asked that very same thing.
Well, this looks like something my grandson lays on.
You bet,
you know.
you bet. The process of taxidermy itself, is, as I mentioned earlier, is basically the removal of the skin of an animal, preserving it, whether it be in whatever pose you want. And of course, I've got, it's kind of a series step-by-step here, and these are all preserved skins off of snow geese. And basically what you do is you select your specimen, and of course we've got what looks to be a fresh dead snow goose here, but this is actually a mounted specimen too for display purposes. But you'd take your specimen that if a hunter again just shot it, or if it was a roadkill of a protected species like a hawk or an owl that the Conservation Board could use for educational purposes, we'd do that. And then of course what you do is you actually skin the animal, and so all you have left is the skin. All of the meat, all of the grease is gone out of the skin.
And how do you get that out of there?
Scalpels, you know, just
really?
Scalpels
Okay.
is really all I work with. You know, make an incision right down the breastbone, and of course I'm referring to birds here, but this process is pretty much duplicated with whether it be a mammal or like a deer head or fish. Again, just take the skin off of it with a scalpel. And it can be a tedious, very meticulous process because you don't want to cut through the skin, because if you do, that's another hole you're going to have to sew up. So you got your fresh skin here. Of course, it's dirty. You might have blood or grease stains on it.
Now, is this blood stain?
The simulated blood stains, of course, for our purposes here.
Okay.
Yeah, these have all been cleaned. This is just paint to make it look like it's dirty. But after that, it's a series of preservation and washing. And so what I'll do as far as birds go is take the skin and I'll wash it with Dawn dish soap.
Really?
You look at the cover, the label of Dawn dish soap, and it says it's environmentally friendly, and it's actually the chemical that they use on birds that have been caught in oil spills, and it will remove the oil from their feathers so that they're all clean and they can be released back into the wild.
Well, you know, you watch those commercials about the different tankers that have crashed and they said they use Dawn dish soap to clean the birds.
It neutralizes the oil and makes it so that it's clean again. But that's what I'll do is I'll wash it, and then you end up with a nice clean skin. And as far as birds, and you can do this on some small mammals like a squirrel or a mink sized creature, preserve it with a dry preservative, and all it is, you can buy it on the store shelf at any grocery store. Borax, 20 mule team borax.
Really?
It's a soap, but it's also preservative. And what I use is a little bit finer material as opposed to the 20 mule team borax, which is kind of like a consistency of a granular sand. What I'll use is a powdered borax, which is like powdered sugar. So.
Okay.
But then you got your skin and you're ready to put it back together. And basically what you do is insert your styrofoam body, it's just a rigid styrofoam, and what supports it to make it look like a live animal again is just support wires that runs through its legs, its wing, and of course you use a foam neck material. And
so this is in here?
That's what's inside there, you bet. And then glass eyes, of course, and the artificial beak and head, and of course they're painted. So really that's, step by step, it's just like building a model.
I see, okay.
You can't skip one step and end up with your final result the way you want it.
So are there different type of these models for swans or different type birds?
You can make them yourself out of different materials. You can take styrofoam and carve your own bodies, and that's typically the way the fish taxidermists do it, because when they remove the body from a fish, the meat, there's different sizes, and so they actually have to carve their own body. So you're not only building your model step by step as far as their skin preservation, but you have to be an artist. They're back to the artistry of the techniques of taxidermy. You have to be a sculptor. You have to be a painter. The list goes on. You got to be creative as far as taking styrofoam and being able to form it in, say, the shape of a rock, and then to get it to paint it and make it look like a real rock. That's an art form in itself, making artificial waters and
So
such.
you basically stick this
Right.
up through
Just
the
insert it right
neck.
through your incision,
Uh-huh.
and then you have to sew up your whatever incision you made. You have to sew it back up, and then you can just position it however way you want it to make it look lifelike.
It's like you say a model putting a model together. I bet when you get it done, the pride is there that you've actually
It is.
done this, and then,
Sure.
and have people say, "That looks almost real," you know.
That's the ultimate comp. And again, it's a learning experience. And just in this last year's competition, I happened to have been in the competition room when the judges were in there, and the bird judge made a quick spin around the room looking
Did
to
it make
see.
you nervous?
No, I was kind of curious to see,
See what-
what sparked his eye and interest. And as he passed my display, I had 2 different bird species in it. And of course, the most work that I do is with ducks and geese. It's just what I really enjoy to do. And I had a waterfowl species along with a raptor. And I haven't done that many raptors. I've done enough to get by and make them look presentable. But as he walked by my display, I heard him say under his breath to an associate, "Well, there's a guy that knows how to do waterfowl, but he's not too good at upland birds yet." And so that to have those 2 pieces sitting side by side, and for him to just at a glance walk by, notice that I was adept at doing waterfowl through was a real, that made me feel good because, and again, how do you get good at it? Just like you get good at anything.
Sure.
Just like the professional athletes. What do you do? Practice, practice, practice.
And learn by your
practice
mistakes.
makes perfect.
Yep,
exactly.
exactly.
You know, those are words right out of my dad's mouth when
Yeah.
I was a kid. Practice makes perfect.
What got you interested in doing something like that?
Well, when I grew up, my interest always lied with birds. My mom wrote in my baby book that one of the first things I would do is I would pull myself up. I couldn't even walk yet. I'd pull myself up, look out the windows, and watch birds. So birds have always been in my blood for whatever reason. I was born with it. And when my dad took me hunting, first time I shot a beautiful, and this is actually a specimen that I'm going to mount. Earlier in the show, I had that wood duck that was sitting in front. Well, this is a freshly dead.
It looks like a pillow or something.
Sure.
I mean, you're moving it around just like it's and it's still bleeding.
It's still bleeding a little bit. So this
Okay,
is
it might just fly out of here, folks. If it does, please do not get alarmed.
Tomorrow, this specimen, I'm going to take him home here, and I'll start working on him this evening at home. I'll skin him out, flesh him, and wash him, and then probably in a day or 2, he's going to look just like that mount that I had completed there. So, you can, again, just fresh specimen here, ready to rock and roll.
How do I ask this, Craig? Are the insides still in there?
Everything is still intact here.
Intact. He's still intact.
Yep.
So that
his
one's
heart,
still.
his lungs, his gizzard, entrails, you name it. It's still in there, and it's my job now to take him home and preserve him for the long term.
And we want security not to guard this so nobody takes him on you because. Now, how do you shoot them so you don't blow them away?
Well, sometimes you do. Sometimes when you're out hunting, you might damage a specimen that is beyond repair, and you just have to move on and hope for another one. But like birds, you shoot them with a shotgun and bird shot. So typically, you don't have one big bullet here that killed this bird. It's a 1 or 2 pellets that may have entered him and done terminal damage to him. So
All the birds and things that you've done, what's your biggest challenge?
the larger birds, swans, the raptors are really tough skinned. And I think that's a defense mechanism because when they're chasing prey, whatever they're looking to capture and eat, whether it is a squirrel or a rabbit, they're going to turn around and fight. They don't want to die. And so that squirrel may, if say it's a red-tailed hawk, that squirrel's going to turn around and he's going to start biting at that hawk. And they need that tough skin so that they don't get damaged or injured and cause an infection or something. So I think the larger birds, in my mind, the turkeys, swans. I've done a couple of eagles for nature centers. Those have been the most challenging. Well, to tell you the truth, it's opposite ends of the spectrum. the large birds, all the way down to hummingbirds.
You've done a hummingbird?
I have not done a hummingbird. The smallest bird that I've done to date has been sparrow size.
So now, when you do a hummingbird, do you get a mold like this for them also?
Conventional
Really?
taxidermy, you bet. They don't make these commercially available, so you'd have to carve your own body.
Oh, really?
Yep, for the small birds, and it's a challenge. The European taxidermists are noted.
You're very tedious in
It is,
doing
it
something
is.
like that.
The European taxidermists are noted for producing just exquisite work on the small birds. I don't know how they do it. I've
You have
tried
to have
for-
more patience than I would, I think,
Yeah,
to
it's-
do.
Yep. It's therapeutic. You know, I'm an early riser, whether it be if I get up early to go out hunting or fishing, or if I'm working on a bird or to mount. I usually get up between 4 and 5 in the morning. Yeah, I'm bird brain, and I said it, not you.
I wasn't going to say anything.
And I'll get up and I'll typically have a specimen thawed out from the night before and get up and work on it for a couple hours.
So your freezer's filled?
We have a food freezer at home, and I have a taxidermy
And you got your
freezer.
own.
I've got them separated.
Dead duck freezer, huh?
Yes, yes.
I get asked all the time on that bird that's down the stairs at the courthouse.
Yeah.
Is that one of yours?
That's my work, and
And I'll just stop him before he gets into his work. But if you ever, if you're just stop in to go into the south door and see that display he's got in there, because that honestly is beautiful.
thank you. And see, that's an invitation for people to come out to the Conservation Center and see more of that. And I've actually got 4 of those types of displays around the community. I've got one down at the Fisher Community Center. I've got a couple in different banks in the community. And again, it's an enticement to come out to the Conservation Center and introduce yourself to people to the out of doors through the Conservation Center to not only visit the Grimes Farm, but that's a gateway to all the other county parks, Greencastle, Timmins Grove, Grammar Grove. But that particular piece, and I actually want to rotate those a little bit more than I do. It's usually 2-3 year rotation basis now. If I can get that on a 1-year rotation. I've actually got a new display right up here that's going to be in the courthouse hopefully by midsummer. We had a specimen run into a power line, and it was a bird that killed itself, and it was a great blue heron. And I've got a display, like I said, already formulated in my mind how I want to present him with artificial water and make it look like he's getting ready to jab at either a minnow or a frog that he wants to eat. And again, that's telling the story. It's not just mounting a specimen. It's putting in a small diorama, a natural history of that bird where he lives in the backwaters of the Iowa River, pursuing leopard frogs. And I might even have a wood duck sitting up on a branch above him.
You got this all plotted out,
I've got
don't
it
you?
all plotted out. It's
Well, when I knew we had to get you on this show, because we just started airing this again after a few years' absence, but you always bring that little bit of niche of entertainment plus education to our shows. And I just want to thank you, first of all, for not bringing anything to eat with you on the show this time, because I never know what you may fix for us. The staff here and the kids in the audience, they all like it, but I always have a hard time. If I'm not driving through the Golden Arches, I'm not going to eat at Stegman's Hideaway either. But thank you. I know it.
I've got it planned for the next time I
I
visit.
know. That's what I'm afraid of. Our calendar's full for the next 18 years, but I'm sure we'll be able to work you in again, Mike.
all right. Appreciate you.
Well, I
having
tell you
me.
what, this is very educational. And again, the show was aired before April 1, April 1st.
Yeah.
Head out to Regency and see the professionals at work
Absolutely.
as they visit Marshalltown.
You bet.
Mike, thank you very much. Thanks for coming out and bringing your family with us as we learn a little bit more about taxidermy and what you do. And we didn't even get into conservation, all the things we got going on.
No,
So we're
that's
going to have to
another
get you
show.
back in there, and
Absolutely.
that's another
You
show
bet.
itself.
Yep.
Well, you've been watching Discover Marshalltown. As you can see, we did not just run out in the parking lot and find these. Mike Stegman's been with us and showing us something about taxidermy. We hope you've enjoyed the show, and we'll see you next time.